Today's daf we're going to be learning is Gittin daf Ayin Bet. As I mentioned in the previous class, this is the daf for Tisha B'Av, and therefore we're going to be posting it. I'm posting it early so that people can listen before Tisha B'Av, since the custom is not to learn Torah on Tisha B'Av. There's a certain pleasure and enjoyment in learning Torah that is not appropriate for Tisha B'Av. Anyway, we're going to get started with our daf. So we started with the Mishnah. We saw in the Mishnah, if somebody says, write a get to my wife, if they said, do you want us to try to get your wife? And he said, write it, which specifically the Gemara jumps on the language, write it. Then if he tells a sofer, if the messengers then go tell a sofer to write it and aid him to sign, even if the husband in the end gives the get himself, it's not a valid get until he says to the sofer, write, and they aid him to sign. It sounds like they have to hear directly from the husband himself. However, the Gemara assumed, first assumption was, when it says k'tovu, it means k'tovu and not shnu. Shnu actually would work. If he said give it, why did it specifically use the language of write? Because if he had said, they had said, do you want us to give the get? And he would have said yes, then they would have been able to appoint messengers. That sounds like Rabbi Meir. But the end of the Mishnah, where it says until you actually say directly to the sofer to write and aid him to sign, sounds like Rabbi Yossi. The machlokes Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Meir is, if you give a get to a messenger, if you give a commandment to a messenger, can the messenger pass it on to somebody else if it's just words alone? And this was words alone. Rabbi Meir says no problem, but he does say it would have to be that you said shnu, and it would have to be in front of three, and then it meant that you were making them messengers, but you could actually pass that on. Whereas Rabbi Yossi said this doesn't work at all. So it sounds like the beginning of the Mishnah is Rabbi Meir, the end of the Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi, which is a little bit strange because it's really all one long sentence. To which Abai said, maybe we could explain the whole thing as Rabbi Meir. And we then had didn't really make so much sense though. We had some questions on him. Then we had that maybe the whole Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi and your inference wasn't correct. The inference of shnu would be okay, only tovu doesn't work. Instead of that, maybe imru would be what it means. Tovu, if you just said, you want us to write it, that wouldn't work. But they couldn't tell other people. But if you said, should we tell a sofer to write and aid him to sign? And he said yes, then it would work. And then that would be Rabbi Yossi, because Rabbi Yossi even agrees with the case of imru. If the husband himself said, go tell a messenger, go tell a sofer to write, go tell witnesses, then they actually can appoint witnesses. That's what we think Rabbi Yossi holds. To which the Gemara says, what are you talking about? We already proved a few dapim ago on Samach Vav, Samach Zayin, that you can't do that. So let's read that inside. And the other problem was, if you remember, they said it should have said at the end of the Mishnah, instead of until you tell them directly, until you say imru. Imru will work also, and then you should have said it. So to which the Gemara says, Moda umi moda Rabbi Yossi, Omer imru, does he really agree? In Omer imru, you could appoint a shaliach? Can't be. How do we know this? V'hatzanon, it says in the Mishnah on Daf Pezayin, Katav sofer be'ed kasher, but if a sofer signs, writes the get, and we don't know yet the signs, but in a second we're going to say it means he signs. Right? Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah Chatam Sofer Shaninu. We're talking about if sofer wrote the get and signed, and one other witness signed with him. Amar Rav Chisda Madniti Mani. Rav Chisda says this mission is according to who? Rabbi Yossi. It must be Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Ta'amal Mili Lo Mimser in the Shaliach. Rabbi Yossi said you can't pass things on to a shaliach, because if you were Rabbi Meir and you said you could pass things on to a shaliach, we would never let a sofer sign. Because if we let a sofer sign in this case, we might let a sofer sign when the husband says directly. We might let a sofer sign in a different case where the husband said, "Go make a sofer go find someone to write the get. Go find witnesses to sign the get." They go and find people. The witnesses see the sofer writing. They said it's unpleasant for us if we start to say, "Oh, we're going to sign and not you." They let the sofer sign instead, and that's not at all what the husband wanted. Because of that, we'll never let a sofer sign, according to Rabbi Meir. And that's all because he holds that messengers can make other messengers in words alone, commands alone. Well, in this case, that could lead to a problem. So we're never going to let sofer sign to avoid any sort of problems with people, the messengers who are allowed to appoint other people, but not if the husband said, make the sofer, the sofer I want him to write, but I want these people to be my witnesses, and then it will end up maybe one of those people won't be the witnesses because they'll let the sofer sign. So that's why the Mishnah is only Rabbi Yossi. Now we're going to prove that Rabbi Yossi doesn't hold imru. Why? If it would work in a case where the husband says Imru in general, the husband told you, go tell the sofer to sign and go tell these witnesses, the sofer to write and these witnesses to sign, then this Chatam Sofer case would never work, because again, you can end up with a problem, as I just explained. Nafit mine horva. Could have a problem. The zimnin to amalu l'shnayim imru l'sofer v'yichtov u'leploni ploni v'yichtimu. We could say to two people, go tell the sofer to write, go tell these people to sign, and we should be super to sofer. And because they're embarrassed for the sofer, they'll ask him to write, and that's not what the husband wanted. And therefore, if Imru were to work, Rabbi Yossi would never allow a sofer to sign. And you see that he does allow a sofer to sign according to Rabbi Yirmiyah and Rav Chisda. So it must be Rabbi Yossi doesn't hold Omer Imru. Therefore, we're going to reject this possibility. The whole thing's Rabbi Yossi, and the inference is instead of Tovu, but yes, Tnu would work. Tovu doesn't work, but yet Imru would work. That doesn't work either. So we're back to Elam Chuvarta Reisha Rabbi Meir b'Sefer Rabbi Yossi. So we're back to saying maybe really we go back and say the first line is Rabbi Meir, and then it switches to Rabbi Yossi's opinion. But now we have a final answer. Rav Ashi Amar, he explains Kula Rabbi Yossi. I'm going to explain it like Rabbi Yossi, but I'm going to change all the inferences that you made. You thought it said Ktovu to exclude Tnu, or you thought it said Ktovu to exclude Amar Imru. No, I'm going to say the following: the Lomai Baya Kama. They didn't even need to tell you. Not only the case where you didn't say Tnu and you only said Ktovu, but even if you said Tnu, it wouldn't work. And it won't matter if you didn't say it in front of three. Even if you said it in front of three, lo, it wouldn't work. He basically says all the things that we suggested, that we assumed were excluded from the Mishnah, they're actually all included in the Mishnah. The Mishnah is the case of Ktovu. It's even if you said Imru. It's even if you said Tnu, even if there were three people. It doesn't matter. You can never make a Shaliach at all. A Shaliach can't appoint another Shaliach. And this is taking Rabbi Yossi to the extreme, which we saw before. Rabbi Yossi is the extreme. And now the Mishnah is basically the extreme, which is, right, no matter what, a messenger can never appoint another person, even if the husband said. The witnesses and the sofer has to hear directly from the husband. And now we're going to bring a braita to prove, to support, anyway, Rav Ashi's theory. Tanya Kavatei Rav Ashi, here's a braita to support. Katav l'safer l'shma, chatmu edim l'shma, the sofer wrote it l'shma, and the edim signed l'shma. Af apish katvu v'chatmu v'natznu lo v'natznu la, harei haget batel. Okay, if a sofer wrote it, the edim signed it, and even if it was all written and done, and they gave it to him, it's all batel. Ad sheyishma'u kolo she'omar l'sofer k'tov. The sofer has to hear the voice of the husband telling him to write it. And la'edim chatomu, and the edim have to hear. Okay, so they have to hear his voice. Now they say, why does it say hear his voice? Yishma'u, hear la'afu kemiman da'amar modeh Rabbi Yossi b'omer imru. They have to hear it directly, and not, that's to say, Rabbi Yossi doesn't hold, right? Don't say Rabbi Yossi holds if the husband said, tell the sofer you could do it. No, they have to hear, the sofer has to hear directly, as do the edim. Kolo, why does it say voice? This goes back to yesterday, who said that he could just write it, right? If he can't speak, he could write the message and they would write a get. This opinion, this braita says, no, you can't do that. It matches the opinion of the rabbis who disagree with Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel that we saw yesterday. New Mishnah. So again, what we did in this section, I'll summarize right now, I'll recap and we won't go back to it at the end. The recap of here is we had this Mishnah, which seems to indicate they have to be told directly. Certainly if it says Ktovu, we tried to say maybe not in other cases, and then tried to figure out, is it Rabbi Yossi, is it Rabbi Meir? We kept struggling. It seems like part Rabbi Meir, part Rabbi Yossi, which would be weird. In the end, Rav Ashi gives an explanation that it's not just Ktovu, it's even Tnu, even in front of three, even if you said Imru, and he specifically said, go tell the sofer, you still can't do it. They have to hear directly. And then we brought a braita to support that reading. New Mishnah. These three cases. This will be your get if I die. This will be your get if I die from this disease that I have. This will be your get after I die. None of those work. Lo amar klum. That's nothing. It's not a get. Right? This is the case where he gives her a get, but gives it under a condition. That condition can never be fulfilled because there is no such thing as a get after death. Mehayomi mati, me'achshavi mati harez a get. But if you say from today if I die, or from right now if I die, this will be your get, then that is a get. If he dies, then the condition is fulfilled retroactively as if it happened when he was still alive, and therefore the get is a good get. Mehayom ula'achar mita, if you say from today and after my death, now that is called mutually exclusive. Either it's today or it's after your death. So which one do you mean? Get ve'eno get. This is what we call a get misafek. We're not sure. She might be divorced. She might not be divorced. The relevance is, he's dead anyway, so she's not a married woman, but maybe she has to do yibum. So that's the deliberation here. So therefore, inmate, if he dies, if her husband had no children, she can't do yibum because maybe she wasn't married to him anymore. Maybe the get was a good get, in which case she's divorced, in which case she can't marry the brother. But maybe she wasn't divorced, and maybe she was still married to him, and therefore she's obligated in yibum. Well, she can do yibum, so she does chalitza. This is your get from today if I died from this disease. And then he got better. And he went and walking in the shuk. And then he got sick again and died. They assess the situation. They try to figure out, is the death that happened now connected with the disease that was then, or is it something different? Okay, Gemara starts off with a small inference and a question. Then we're going to have a long sugya that's going to take us most of the daf. First, the Gemara says, "Alma imati kilachar mitadam, v'hadatani mehayomi imati me'achshav imati alma imati la kilachar mitadam." If you look at these words, imati, if I die. In the beginning of the Mishnah, we said if you say if I die, that means after death. The next case said if it's today, if I die seems to be saying now. In other words, it's a reference to it'll be now if I die later. So one seems to say it's after death, and one seems to say it's from now. So how do we explain? That language could go in both ways, and it really depends. This would have been what you would have answered this, which is sometimes it could mean now. This will be your get now if I die later. Sometimes it means this will be your get if I die later, and it's only referring to later. It depends what it goes with. If you say from today, it's like you said from now. But if you didn't say from today, then it's like after death. So it really depends what word it goes with to determine whether imati means now or imati means if I die later. In other words, again, imati obviously means if I die later, but the question is, does it mean the get is relevant now or not? And that really depends on what word you put with it or didn't put. Okay, now we're going to have this line again that we just said, but here we're going to focus on the words lo amar klum. Lo amar klum sounds like it's not a get at all. She's definitely married. That means she would have to do yibum. And she could do yibum because she was definitely married. This wasn't a get at all. And that's why this next line is very puzzling. Amar Rav Huna v'choletze. Rav Huna says, and she does chalitza. Why should she do chalitza? Lo amar klum katani. It says in the Mishnah, lo amar klum. To which they answer, first answer was a bit of a strange answer. They're going to reject it. Lo amar klum doesn't mean it's not a get at all. Lo amar klum means she's forbidden to everyone in the world because until she does chalitza. And she's also forbidden to the abam because she can't do yibum because she's not necessarily, it's a doubt case. This is like we said before with the case of doubt. To which the Gemara asks, if this is a case of doubt and lo amar klum means we're not sure, and therefore we have to treat her with both stringencies. Well, but later on in the Mishnah, it said in this case, if you said me'achshav ula'achar mita, that's a case where it's get ve'eno get and she has to do chalitza. This case said lo amar klum, so they must be different. And the fact that it says therefore here she should be able to do yibum because she's definitely not divorced. So Rav Huna makes no sense, to which they explain. Rav Huna wasn't explaining the line in our Mishnah like you thought. Matnitin kerabanan, Rav Huna dama kerabi Yossi. The Mishnah follows the rabbi's position, and Rav Huna is following Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Dama, what's Rabbi Yossi? Zmano shel shar muchiachal. This is a Mishnah in Bava Batra, which I'll read in Rashi. If you look later, if you look here, Matnitin kerabanan, who argue with Rabbi Yossi, b'yesh noklin. The parak in Bava Batra, Kuf Lamed Vav. Dekatane hakotev kol nechasav lebeno. If you write all your money to your son, What you were trying to say is, I want to give you all my possessions for when I die, meaning I want to write all the other kids out of my will. Well, you have to write mehayom ulachar mitah, today and after my death. If not, ilo havale matana lachar mitah. What's the problem? If you don't say that, the assumption here is you're still healthy, actually, not a shchid meirah, because then laws are a little bit different. But assuming the Mishnah is talking about when you're healthy, what will happen? If you don't say mehayom ulachar mitah, then what's going to happen? When you die, it's automatically going to go to your other children, and then that child won't be able to get all the money out of them. So you would have to say it kicks in now, because otherwise laws of inheritance kick in the second you die. So you would have to word it in the hayom ulachar mitah. Rabbi Yossi disagrees. And the reason they give for Rabbi Yossi is because the date in the contract, when you write it, you wrote it on a certain day when you were still alive. So we go by the day you wrote it. So when you die, your money doesn't go automatically to all your other children because you wrote it specifically here to this son. Okay, and then we go by the date. So now we're going to see how this fits in. Because if it's manosh shtar mochiach halav, then in our case, what happened? It doesn't matter if you said imati, if I die, that's a future date, because there's a date on the get of today when you're still alive. And therefore, according to Rabbi Yossi, she does chalitza because okay, now it gets a little tricky and we're going to have a question right now, but instead of lo amar klum, the rabbi said this is a meaningless statement. According to Rabbi Yossi, it's actually a meaningful get because the date of the get is now while he's still alive. So now the Gemara is going to ask, though, you can figure this out. If that's the case, according to Rabbi Yossi, it should be a perfectly good get. If it's a perfectly good get, then she shouldn't need to do chalitza at all. Forget about, no yibum, but no chalitza at all. So, Rabbi Yossi, that's the next question of the Gemara. Chalitza nami lo tibai. She shouldn't even need to do chalitza because it's a definite good get. And this, when he says choletzet, that means there's a doubt. Rav Huna said, and now let's assume he means according to Rabbi Yossi, there's a doubt whether this is a good get or not a good get. If it's a doubt, then it doesn't make any sense. If you say Rabbi Yossi, it should work because you have the date on the shtar and we go by the date. And again, Rabbi Yossi doesn't need you to say mehayom or me'achshav. Just the date itself is enough. So even if you say, if I die, Rabbi Yossi is going to say against what it says in our Mishnah, that's actually a good get. So why was he, confused about it? Again, choletzet means we don't know. Maybe it's a get, maybe it's not a get. We have to be strict in all ways. And that's why no yibum, but yes, chalitza. You can't just marry anyone until you do chalitza. So Rav Huna, now we're going to say, the chid came. We're going to have a few different options to try to understand what this doubt of Rav Huna is. That's the easiest. Maybe he's not sure if we paskin like Rabbi Yossi or not. And that's why he says, she should do chalitza because maybe we don't hold like Rabbi Yossi. But she can't do yibum because maybe we do hold like Rabbi Yossi and then she's not obligated at all because this is a valid get. Well, can't be that. Mimasapkale, he's not in doubt whether we hold like Rabbi Yossi. He knows for sure we hold like Rabbi Yossi, and we're going to bring a story to show where he's going to hear Rabba Bar Avua paskin like Rabbi Yossi and pass it down in the name of Rav, and therefore we can assume that Rav Huna goes according to that psak. So here's the story. Ha Rabba Bar Avua chalash. He was sick. Ulegabe Rav Huna v'Rav Nachman. They go to visit him, but before they go into the room, Amar le Rav Huna le Rav Nachman. Bani name Rabba Bar Avua halakha Rabbi Yossi o en halakha. He says to him, listen. When we go inside, Rav Huna says to Rav Nachman, please go ask Rabba Bar Avua, does he hold like Rabbi Yossi or not on this issue? On the issue that we said about the gift, which would then apply to here as well. Amar le Tana de Rabbi Yossi la yadana halachai ba'yamine. There's a great line. He says, and maybe it's like a big promo why you should learn Gemara. He says, I don't even understand the reason for Rabbi Yossi. What we know already is that Rabbi Yossi says, if you write to your son, I'm giving all of my property, right, from today and going ahead in the future, even if you don't say today, okay, you just said, I'm giving you all my possessions after my death. You don't have to say hayom, me'achshav, it doesn't matter, because the date on the get is, the shtar is what counts, the date on the document. So when you die, your son will get that automatically. And likewise with this get, if you say this will be your get after my death, or if I die, then it's a good get. According to Rabbi Yossi, because it kicks in right now when the date of this get is written. But Rabbi Nachman says, I can't go ask what the halakha is when I don't even understand the opinion. And this is why you should understand things before, right? You might say, oh, you just need to know what to do in life. Like, that's all. You need to know halacha l'maaseh. But no, you really need to understand what you're doing before you can ask halacha l'maaseh. Well, then, the answer is a little bit strange, where Rav Huna answers him, if really he feels the need to know before he asks the question. Well, he says to him the following. Amarle, Tamid Rabbi Yossi lo yada. Amarle, sorry. Adva minei halacha, v'tamid Rabbi Yossi ani anima. Listen, first you go ask him the halacha, and then I'll explain to you the reason of Rabbi Yossi, what it's based on. Okay, in other words, don't worry about that. I got that covered. You ask him, and then come back, and I'll explain to you. So he goes, he asks him, Rav Nachman asks, and it comes out saying, yes, Rav Barvua said the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. The Batar did nothing after he goes out, Amarle, and then he comes and he explains to him, Rav Huna explained, the reason for Rabbi Yossi is because it has a date in the document, and we go by the date in the document, that's why it's back. So now he explains the following. This is the end of the first attempt. We tried to say, what is Rav Huna's safek when he says the woman has to be choletzet? In the case of the husband says, this will be your get if I die. What's the case? What's the safek? What's he not sure about? Is it that he's not sure if we hold like Rabbi Yossi or not? That can't be it, because we already said we hold like Rabbi Yossi. Now the Gemara is going to suggest another suggestion. Now, this case that we talked about in Baba Batra is a case where it's written in the get, in the document. The get is a document, but we've been using it not really for a document. It's written in the document. This will be your gift when I die. And then it's signed and all that. So now they suggest the following. Now, our case was different. The get was a regular get. It didn't have the condition written in the get. But when he gave it to her, he said, this will be your get if I die. Okay? Now, maybe that's different. So, Elam is Sapkale, moving now to Amabet. Here's the second approach to what maybe Rav Huna was confused about. Maybe he wasn't sure, not confused, but he wasn't sure about. Did Rabbi Yossi agree? Did Rabbi Yossi hold the same thing if it was given orally, the condition, and he just said to her, this is your get if I die, but it wasn't written in the document? Okay, is it Valpeh or not? Okay? But this also doesn't work because Rabbi Yossi doesn't have a doubt about this. Why not? How do we know? It says in the Mishnah. This is your get if I don't show up in the next 12 months. Get. If he dies within those 12 months, it's not a get. Because he didn't show up because he died. There was a braita on this that said, the rabbis permitted her to marry without doing chalitza. Because the rabbis said, this is a get, okay? So she doesn't need anything. And they said, who are these rabbis? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Beidina desharu mishcha. They're the Beit Din that permitted the oil of Gentiles. That's all separate issue. I'm not going to get into that now. V'savrela, this Beit Din held to Rabbi Yossi. That Beit Din held like Rabbi Yossi, who said it all goes by the date. And that's why here we have a case where he gave her the get. It didn't say any condition in the get, but he said, this is your get if I don't show up. And according to Rabbi Yossi, it's effective from that date before he died, because the date of the get is on there. So here you see, even when it was an oral condition, Rabbi Yossi still holds that the same thing. So it can't be that Rabbi Yehuda was, that Rav Huna wasn't sure what Rabbi Yossi thought in that case. Third option. This is sort of a combo of the last two. The question was, do we hold, it's true Rabbi Yossi hold, whether it's written in the document or whether it's not written in the document, the condition, it doesn't matter. We always go by the date of the shtar. But maybe Rav Huna wasn't sure if when we hold like Rabbi Yossi, that he got the psikah, that we hold like Rabbi Yossi specifically in a case where it's written in the document. But maybe we don't hold like Rabbi Yossi in a case where the condition was said orally. That's the question. So again, Elam Esapkele, he wasn't sure. Do we hold like Rabbi Yossi when it was said orally or not? Umi Mesapkele, again, we're going to reject it and say, is there really a doubt about this? Bahama Rava, to prove that there's really no doubt about whether we hold this way, we're going to show Rava, and we're going to show that Rava had no doubt, and therefore assume that Rav Huna had no doubt. So how do we know Rava had no doubt? Because Rava said, Hareze gitech imati, v'sha'ani met, hareze get. Rava said, if you say this is your get if I die, which is just like our Mishnah, Visha anime, which is different than our Mishnah, another language. And if when I die, harez again, this counts. Kisha amut ulachar mita, when I die in the future or after my death, if you say that, ein ze get. Now, hechidami, what's the case here and who does it go according to? Now, if you're the Rabbanat, if you're going to say what Rabba said was according to the Rabbi's opinion, you would have to say that it said mehayom, right? Mehayom imati or mehayom ulachar mita, right? Each one, mehayom imati is a get, right? Well, sricha lememar, you wouldn't need to say this. V'hatznad, it already says in our Mishnah, mehayom imati are is a get. In other words, that case of mehayom imati is already explicit in our Mishnah. Why would Rabba say something that's explicitly in our Mishnah? Elalav, so therefore it can't be, they're teaching us the rabbis, because that's explicit in our Mishnah, that it all depends whether you say mehayom or not. So it must be de lo amar la mehayom, it must be you didn't say mehayom, vit Rabbi Yossi. And then, right again, sorry, let me just make it more clear. Imati or she'ani amut, if you said it with hayom, it would work, and that's what Rav must have been talking about in the first reading. And then if you say mehayom, ula'achar mita, that doesn't work. That's what we saw in the Mishnah. There was at least doubt about that case. So now we're going to say the following. It can't be that because that was obvious from the Mishnah. And Rava wouldn't tell us something that was obvious from the Mishnah. So it must be de lo amar la mehayom. No, the simple reading of this, which it didn't say hayom, so it must be without the word mehayom. Be Rabbi Yossi, and then it's Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Now, what do you see here? That Rabbi Yossi, again, Shema mina halacha ke Rabbi Yossi. If Rabba is saying, according to Rabbi Yossi, that even if you don't say the word mehayom, but you just say imati, here's your get, if I die, and that's oral, then it's the tradition, the condition is said orally, then basically you're going to end up with clear that Rava holds like Rabbi Yossi, even in a case of an oral condition. So, and since the assumption here is since Rava is sure about Rabbi Yossi, and that he holds this way, it can't be Rav Huna was in doubt about this. Well, the first answer is, who's to say that? Okay, le Rava pshita le Rav Huna mastapkale. The first answer is, no, really, Rav Huna wasn't sure if we hold like Rabbi Yossi in that case or not, of oral condition. But the fact that Rava was clear to Rava doesn't mean it was clear to Rav Huna. Rava could think, I'm sure that Rabbi Yossi holds this way, or that we hold like Rabbi Yossi in this way. And Rav Huna could say, I'm not so sure we hold like Rabbi Yossi in this way, in this case. That's one option. And let's go back to option one, which is option one within this, the words of Rava, that he really was holding according to the rabbis. And it really was a case of Me'ayom. And why is this not redundant if we already have the Mishnah? Well, I already pointed this out at the beginning. Highly shana it's there are some languages here that didn't appear in the Mishnah, like sha'ani met ki imati dami, kishamu kalachar dami, kalachar mita dami. It was to explain to you that not just imati, but if you say the words kisha'ani met, it's like imati. And if you say kisha amut, then it's like kalachar mita. And that was what Rabba was trying to teach us. So it's true, some of it was redundant, but some of it was new, and that was his whole point. This is like this, and this is like that, and then those are referenced back in the Mishnah, and you know what those. That was all a very long-winded way to try to understand this statement that Rav Huna made, where he said, she's choletzet in the case of imati. And then we had to say, why is she choletzet? It's obviously a case of doubt. He holds like Rabbi Yossi, but if he holds like Rabbi Yossi, why is he in doubt? Why is it not clear? And then we had to say, well, he's in doubt. In the end, we get to the conclusion, he's in doubt whether the condition, if the condition was, or the stipulation was made orally, then do we still hold like Rabbi Yossi and say we still go exclusively by the date and therefore it will be valid or not? But if it wasn't confusing enough, some people say that the whole statement of Rav Huna Choletzet was talking about the last case. Now, the last case of the first line of the Mishnah, not the end of the Mishnah, but the Mishnah had given three statements here. Zegi techimati, if I die. Zegi tech mecholizer, if I die from the sickness. And zegi tech la'achar mita. This is your get after my death. And there in the Mishnah it said, lo amar klum. Comes Rav Huna and says the following. Ikadematne la sefer. Zegi tech la'achar mita lo amar klum. And amar Rav Huna, u'ledivrei Rabbi Yossi choletzet. Specifically in the case of la'achar mita, Rabbi Yossi himself distinguishes. If you say, if I die, that goes by the date in the get, and it's definitely a good get. But if you say, after my death, to him, there's a date in the get, but if you're also saying after my death, that's a little bit of a confusing statement. And that's the case where we're in doubt and choletzet. And then the Gemara is going to say, what do you mean? Pshita. That's also obvious, because if the rabbis say in a case of mehayom ulachar mitah, you have to do chalitza because we're not sure. Well, Rabbi Yossi holds any case where you say lachar mitah or imati is just like saying mehayom imati or mehayom ulachar mitah. So if the rabbis say mehayom ulachar mitah is a case of doubt, then to Rabbi Yossi, just saying lachar mitah is a case of doubt, because lachar mitah means you have the date and the get, which is mehayom, you have lachar mitah, which is there, and that's confusing. It's like sticking your hands in both directions. Which way do I go? And you put your hands in both directions, right? How can you go both directions? You can't. So that's basically a case of doubt. In which case, it's obvious, and Rav Huna wouldn't even need to tell us this. To which the Gemara says, no. Ma'u detema Rabbi Yossi bahake Rebbe svirale. Now we're going to add in a whole different opinion of Rebbe, who we're going to quote in a minute. We don't see it inside yet. But Rebbe seems to say, if you say mehayom ulachar mitah, it's actually a get. Okay? Not like the rabbis who say it's nothing at all. I'm sorry. Not like the rabbis who say it's a case of doubt. Not like Rabbi Yossi, we don't know. In other words, Rabbi Yossi is going to say it's a case of doubt. But Rebbe is going to say it's a totally clear get. Even though you said after death, it's because you said mehayom, it's going to count right now. So da'amar gita ma'alihu b'chalitza nami lo tibai. So you might have thought maybe Rabbi Yossi holds like Rebbe on this issue and doesn't even require chalitza at all. Kamashmalan comes Rav Huna to say delo savar, delo Rebbe savar like Rabbi Yossi, delo Rabbi Yossi savar like Rebbe. What he wanted to teach us, Rav Huna, is two things. Rebbe doesn't hold like Rabbi Yossi, because Rebbe's case we're going to see in a minute is mehayom la'achar mitah. Now Rabbi Yossi, remember, thinks that la'achar mitah is as if you said mehayom. Rebbe doesn't hold that way. He says it's only going to count from now if you say the word mehayom. But if you say la'achar mitah, Rabbi Yossi is not going to agree with him on that point, which is we're going to count it, even though it sounds like they're two different things. He actually says, no, it really counts from now. Okay, and Rabbi Yossi is not going to agree with him about that. So let's read it inside. Rebbe lo savar like Rabbi Yossi de katani kazeh get to Rabbi Yossi. We're now going to say, how is he so convinced, Rav Huna? The Rebbe doesn't hold like Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi doesn't hold like Rebbe. Because each of them make a statement and say, this is a get, this seems to indicate this case and not another one. And Rabbi Yossi lo savar like Rebbe da katani kazeh get. Again, he said kazeh get, say, and not the case of Rebbe. So now we're going to have to finally see, they keep talking about these things outside, but now we're going to see them inside. Rebbe Maihi, where does Rebbe say what he said? Titanya mehayom ulachar mitah get ve'eno get. Says in a bright, if you say from today and after your death, after I die, it's the husband, get ve'eno get, divrei chachamim. The rabbis say, that's exactly what we saw in our Mishnah, it's a get, but it's not a get, meaning we're not sure how to treat it. We're machmir on both sides. Rebbe Omel kazeh get. Rebbe says this is a get. So there you see it. This is a get, but not another case, meaning I'll count it if you said mehayom, but if you didn't say mehayom and it just had the date, I don't hold like Rabbi Yossi that would work. Rabbi Yossi Maihi, Titnan, and this is a different issue, but we're going to say because here he says kazeh get, shows he doesn't agree with Rebbe, that specifically the language of la'achar mitah is super confusing, and he actually thinks, right, again, if you just say imati, if I die, and there's a date in the get, we go by the date in the get. But if you say la'achar mitah, which really sounds like it's really only going to hit after my death, then we're going to treat it as a suffix, and Rabbi Yossi himself isn't going to know what to do with it. And that's what Rav Huna is talking about, that Rabbi Yossi himself would say we're strict in this case in both directions. So how do we know? It says in the Mishnah, Kitvu utnu get liishtim lo bati mikam vad yubach chodesh, write and give this get to my wife if I don't show up in the next 12 months. Kitavu b'toch yubach chodesh, if they wrote it within 12 months. Now he says only write it after 12 months. So if you wrote it within 12 months and gave her la'achar yubach chodesh, and gave it to her after the 12 months, ain't no get, it's not a get. And Rabbi Yossi Omel kazeh get. Rabbi Yossi says this is a get. Okay, so what do you see here? Again, this is totally irrelevant to our purposes, but since he says here, this is a get, it's coming to distinguish from Rebbe's case where he doesn't think that's a valid get. It's a little bit hard to understand why they get from that case to this case, but that's just because we're trying to figure out how we know that Rabbi Yossi didn't hold like Rebbe. And that was all just to explain the second reading of Rav Huna. So we had two readings of Rav Huna. Either Rav Huna said, Choletzet, it's a suffix in a case where you said, this is your death this is your get if I die, and that he was in doubt whether we hold like Rabbi Yossi in a case where the stipulation was oral, or the case where Rabbi Yossi holds there's a suffix is specifically when you say la'achar mitah. That language, does that contradict your date, or do we still go by the date? And that's the case where you have to do chalitza. And that distinguishes from Rebbe, who, and that's again, it's different for the rabbis who say only if you say mehayom, we're going to count it from now. And it's definitely not a get. And you have Rebbe on the other side who says this definitely is a get. And Rabbi Yossi is in the middle saying we're not sure. Last section for today. This is your get from today. If I die from this disease, and then you get up and you walk in the shuk, and then you die, does this count or not, right? We have to assess the situation. So I'm a Rav Huna. Gito kimatanato. So the first thing Rav Huna says is get is like a gift. In what way? If you're talking about someone on their deathbed and they give a gift, or they give a get to my wife, if you said it on your deathbed, I'm giving away my money, well, we give it back to you if you got better, because you really only meant to divide it when you were dead. So same thing with a get. If you haven't given a get to the wife, then we undo what you said. And just like with a get, if you said write it, but you didn't say give it, we assume if you're on your deathbed, you meant write and give. Likewise with a matana, the analogy to there is saying write the get in a gift is like saying give the gift without actually doing a kinyan, an act of acquiring. So saying give the gift is the same as if you acquired, the other person acquired. But the first part is what's really important. He says, if you got up from your disease, then we don't give the get. But that goes against our Mishnah, because Tanan, in our Mishnah, it says, you got up, you were better, you went to the shuk, and then you got sick again and died. We assess the situation. We try to assess, did you die from that or not? But if you say, if he got up from being sick, as soon as this person got up from being sick and went to the shuk, it's clear it's something new after that, or it doesn't really matter. Because as soon as he gets up, the get is canceled. The commandment is not right. The fact that he commanded you to do this is irrelevant. It's done. But this seems to indicate no. So I remember Rav Yosef B'Shmei Rava. We try to explain that case a little better that we said in the Mishnah where we do omdim. Shenitak micholi lecholi. You never really got up. You just went from one disease to another without any sort of right. You kind of were sick with that. You got another thing, and then right maybe got better from the first one, but you still the sicknesses were kind of one continuum. Then they said, how could you say that? Ha'amad katani, it says you got up. So it's like as soon as you got up, you immediately got sick. And therefore, we're going to view them as connected, even though there was maybe a few minute break in between or something. But it says you got up and went in the shuk. There was clearly a break. So halacha mishanto. It says you went in the shuk. It meant you went on your cane. You weren't really back to your full strength yet. Okay, so we'd have to have some case where it was a continuum. Otherwise, this law wouldn't make sense that we said before that Rav Huna said that once you get up, what you commanded is canceled. And then we're going to go into more of this tomorrow and finish this sugya because we're kind of in the middle. So what we saw in the second part of today's daf was this whole thing about a get after death and what language works, what language doesn't work. We saw there was a debate, the rabbis and Rabbi Yossi about this, starting really from a Mishnah and Bava Batra about a document, but then we applied it also to an oral stipulation like our Mishnah. And then the question was, how much does that apply? And when Rav Huna says, the first case in our Mishnah would be a case of choletzet, it's number one, the Mishnah's the rabbis. He's talking according to Rabbi Yossi. And what's his doubt then? Why isn't it definitely a get? So the first answer we gave was that he was in doubt about whether, and that's the first conclusive answer we gave after we tried a bunch of options, that it was a debate whether we hold like Rabbi Yossi or not in an oral stipulation. The second one was that he was actually talking about something else. He was talking about specifically the phrase la'achar mitah, and that Rabbi Yossi himself is not clear whether la'achar mitah, if you say la'achar mitah, do we go by the date of the get or do we go by the after death? And if it's after death, it won't work, only if we go by the date of the get. Since he was in doubt about it, he requires the woman to do chalitza. then we said that he disagrees with both Rebbe on this issue and the rabbis. They each are at different extremes. Rabbi saying it's not a get at all, and Rebbe saying it is a get. But Rebbe again would only say it's a get if you say mehayom lachar mitah. And the rabbis say if you say mehayom lachar mitah, it's a doubt. If you just say lachar mitah, it's definitely nothing. And then we ended with this thing about amav. If you get better from the first disease, at what case do we still think that maybe you died from the first disease? And in which case do we say, no, you already got up. It's clear your command is canceled entirely. And she wouldn't get the get no matter what. Okay, so where do we draw the line and how do we reconcile that? What Rafuna said about the get, the gift being like the get, that as soon as you get up from that sickness, it's canceled, versus our Mishnah, which seemed there could be a case where you got up, but yet you still died from the same disease, and you could actually still give her the get. So how do we reconcile those? We're kind of in the middle of that. Wishing everybody a good fast, and our fast should be atonement for us and bring the Geula. Have a great day, everyone.